Hello and welcome to On the Board. My name is Mike Vast. If you've known me over the last few years or you followed me on social media, you know doing a podcast is something I've always wanted to do. I've just frankly been lazy. Wouldn't you know, a friend of mine texted me this morning and said, why don't you do something that you've always wanted to do but never got around to? You won't regret it. So I guess that was a sign I needed. Here we are. On the Board is going to focus on college football and professional football, as well as the recruiting process, free agency, coaching, and why things happen. Not just what happens, but why. I'm an analytic and a coach, so naturally I'm curious, and I'm going to bring that perspective to you. I've also been able and very fortunate to work with Fox Sports and know people in media and in coaching at every level. So I feel like through this discussion, which hopefully it is a discussion, hopefully through your comments and questions, we can create a discourse that will add to some pretty cool content. Today's episode is going to be based on Marquise Brown, wide receiver for the Baltimore Ravens. The draft is done, free agency has calmed down, and here in Baltimore, one of the biggest questions looking to the Ravens season is what will Marquise Brown be like, assuming he's fully healthy, and he is, but assuming he doesn't have any other hiccups between now and the season. He was a big part of the Ravens last year, even though he didn't play as much as he would have liked. He was very effective when he got in the game, and overall, you can see how on and off the field, he and Lamar Jackson are growing seemingly by the day. And that is something that as a general manager you always want, as a coach you always want, but you can never know for sure that it'll happen. A lot of times you look at players and you know they have physical talent, you know they have a drive, and you meet with them and everything checks the box. And it's not that you doubt that they have this, but you're not sure that they have that ability to work together until you actually see them do it on the field. So, all that being said, the Ravens are in a very good position going into 2020. Their schedule's out. They have a favorable schedule if you go by the strength of schedule rating, which I guarantee coaches do not. And it's a nice talking piece, and I get it, but every team's different, every year is different, and you just never know. Plus, with the way the Ravens season ended, really the last 2 years, I guarantee they're not going to roll into any week and think that it's not important. So, looking ahead to the Ravens, and specifically looking at Marquise Brown, I think the best way to do that was, ironically enough, to look back. So I went with my friend Michael Crawford of Russell Street Report, and we broke down some tape of Brown's best game and worst game of the season. And we decided that, we agreed upon the fact that Brown's best game, I think it's all everyone can say, was the Dolphins game, week 1, where he caught 4 passes for 147 yards and 2 touchdowns, most of them in the first quarter. And a few weeks later, at Kansas City, he caught 2 passes for 49 yards on, I believe, 9 targets. So you can tell how that process was going for him. It was up and down. And as a rookie, you're just trying to, sometimes I think you just try to know the play, much less perform and execute it. But he did very well. He also had some tough games. But again, Kansas City won the Super Bowl, so he wasn't playing a slouch when he quote-unquote struggled. I mean, you can say only 2 catches, but you can also say 24.5 yards per reception. It all depends what your perspective is. So what we looked at when we studied the tape was in Miami. Again, this is his first game as a pro, and no one had film on him as a pro. A lot of the Dolphins players gave him cushion. So if you're unfamiliar with that term, that means he lines up on the line instead of a defensive back being here. They line up way back to hopefully negate his speed. Well, that didn't quite work because on his first play, he scored a touchdown and didn't look back. Like I said, 147 yards, 2 touchdowns in any game for any player that has ever played receiver. Great game, much less your first NFL game on the road. And so he started well. You noticed that he was able to run up to the defensive back and get into their hips, and meaning like force them to turn one way while he would go the other. And he created space. So not only does he have the speed, he had the technical savvy, even at that point in his career when he was just getting started, to get defensive backs going one way and then change sudden direction. He also uses what we call a hand swipe. So if he's breaking off a route to the inside, he'll hand swipe or swat the defensive backs as a way to create space. And totally legal, and if you think about it, it goes with your momentum of the play, so it would be foolish to not do that. So again, as a receiver, as a rookie receiver, he knew all that. Of course, he was coached well, but he knew enough to concentrate and do that in the moment when the time came. He did struggle at times to fight through contact. And again, if you followed Hollywood Brown, he had a nagging foot injury, a bad injury last year that he was playing through. So let's give him credit for that. And as you saw, as you watched his tape, he fought through it, and it wasn't, he got back up to speed, but you could just tell that something was holding him back. But credit to him for fighting through that. I think the thing I was most impressed with him, especially in the Miami game, was his ability to track the ball. Now, if you've ever played pickup football or like Turkey Bowl football, Thanksgiving, or anything like that, if you've ever go out for a pass and you look up and you're running for an extended period of time, 4, 5, 6, 7 seconds, there's all the more time for you to mess up. It's that much more variables for you to not perform. Well, he was able to not only break stride, maintain speed, but track the football, make the catch, and score a touchdown. Again, that's why the Ravens drafted him. Like he has incredible talent, and he showed that ability time and again at Oklahoma. But doing it on the pro level is something much different. So credit to him for that. When you go to the Kansas City game, in the Miami game, they started by giving him cushion, and then they pressed him, and he still made catches, but not the big game-breaking catch. So you saw that essentially when the cushion was decreased, his impact or yardage decreased. So if you follow the NFL, you know coaching, you know players. It's a copycat league. Kansas City knew that. They knew he was one of Baltimore's best players, at least in terms of big play potential. They're going to press him. So they did, and he still got into his route. He still gained ground. He still went deep. But they, like I said, only 2 catches for 49 yards. He didn't make as many plays, even close to as many plays as he did in Miami. Plays he did make, Kansas City made him earn it. They schemed a little bit differently where they would press and fight with him through the route, as opposed to what Miami did was try to play off and have him declare his route so that they could use their cushion to guard against that, but that didn't work. And when you press somebody in football, there's always a threat to just be completely juked out at the line. And I know that when Brown, as he evolves in this league, his release skills everything's going to improve. But at this point, week 3 of his career, again, still very, very early, he had a little bit more of a challenge. So it was encouraging if you're a Ravens fan to know that Lamar Jackson still went to him. He's still, 9 targets. If you're not getting open, if you're not making plays, if you're not making the defensive back work, the quarterback's not going to look to you. but Brown was. So sometimes it's the impact isn't always in the stats. And then if you look at his last game of the year, the playoff game against Tennessee, yes, the Ravens lost. But again, first game of the career, 4 catches, 147 yards, 2 touchdowns. Last game of the year, first playoff game, 7 catches, 126 yards. Had a great game against the Rams on Monday Night Football. Obviously, we want Hollywood Brown to be healthy. We want him to perform, be on the field consistently. And he was, for the most part. But when he's on the field, he is as dangerous as they come at the wide receiver position. And you know he's only going to get better. So I think it's wise to take that into account and say, well, he carved up the Dolphins, struggled against a good team in the Chiefs, but then he came back against the Rams and the Titans later in the year. I mean, that's pretty encouraging. In a way, yeah, you want you want any player to always do well. That's not going to happen. So you look at realistic expectations. If you can do something well consistently, that's great. If you can show out, especially on a playoff game, or in a playoff game, the divisional round, primetime football, I mean, that's just a bonus. So now he's working out, he's healthy, he's ready to go. Obviously, he has a great chemistry with Lamar Jackson. And they added Devin Duvernay from Texas. The Ravens did. Another track guy. So, I mean, you talk about J.K. Dobbins in the run game. Obviously, Mark Ingram, Mark Andrews, Nick Boyle, Miles Boykin. Just all these weapons. Who are you going to cover? You double Hollywood Brown, Duvernay is open, or Andrews has single coverage. Or, oh, by the way, a guy named Lamar Jackson, who won the MVP, can always hurt you. The best player in the league. So if you're a Ravens fan, it's very encouraging because the one way the Ravens could not be good, at least just going into this year, is if they were hurt, if they were injured. They didn't have chemistry. That's not the case. We wonder how the right guard position is going to go, but they have enough now to fill in a guy there that has been there before, or DJ Fluker may take that over. I mean, who knows, but they look very solid. So if you're a Ravens fan, you should be very encouraged. And on that note, if you can leave a question or a comment below, greatly appreciate it. I'll answer it in the next podcast, and we can create a discussion because this is for you. And I hope that through this process, you learn something and I learn something. We'll talk at another time about all aspects of football, from the players' thought process, the coaches, the media, what they go through, what they look for, how they cover the sport. It's going to be a good time. I hope you can join us next time, and I hope to have some guests at a later date too. So for now, this is Mike Fast, and this has been On the Board. Thanks for joining us.